Dr. Alan Whitmore was the kind of man who could deliver twins in a blackout and still be home in time to feed the birds. He had that rare, reassuring, part surgical precision, part emotional detachment that made him beloved by patients and quietly feared by colleagues. But when he retired at 65, the silence got to him. His wife Elaine had passed away 2 years earlier from ovarian cancer, and the house they'd built together now echoed with unanswered questions. He didn't talk much about grief. He preferred motion. So on the morning of June 12th, he packed his Subaru Outback with trail mix, a map, a Polaroid camera, and his old hiking boots, mud still dried into the creases from a trek in 2003. He left a note on the fridge for his daughter. Gone to Rainier. Back by Sunday, don't worry. But Sunday came, and Alan didn't. The rangers found his car at the edge of the Skyline Trail loop. The keys were still in the ignition, his jacket neatly folded on the passenger seat. But the man, gone. No signs of a struggle. No torn clothes. Just ... vanishing. Park. Investigators opened a case file. More out of obligation than belief. Missing hikers weren't rare in Mount Rainier. Avalanches, falls, even cougars. Nature didn't care about your career or your clean record. They combed the area for 3 days. No footprints beyond the ridge. No broken branches. Just a stretch of earth too quiet, like it had swallowed the man whole. His daughter, Leila Whitmore, wasn't convinced. She knew her father. He didn't vanish. He planned, he prepared, he told you when he was going to be 5 minutes late. She flew in from Baltimore 2 days after the news hit her voicemail. Leila, it's Dad. I'm heading out to the place. I think I finally figured it out. It's time. I'll see you where it started. She played it 23 times on the plane. The place. What place? Figured what out, and where it started. There were things Alan never talked about. Like the lawsuit in 2002. Like the nurse who drowned on a staff retreat. Maybe that voicemail wasn't just rambling. Maybe it was a breadcrumb. He ever talk about wanting to disappear? The ranger asked her as they stood by his empty car. Disappear. He was a surgeon, not a magician. Some people get tired, especially alone. Leila crossed her arms. My father didn't get tired. He got curious. He got restless. But he didn't walk off cliffs without a plan. The ranger hesitated. We found a torn map in the glove compartment, circle drawn in red ink, where, somewhere off trail, near an old glacial runoff. But we didn't find anything there. Leila stepped closer. Show me. I want to see it for myself. Look, Miss Whitmore, don't miss me. That's my dad. In there, and I'm not leaving until I figure out why he left. The forest was alive with indifference. Pine needles whispered underfoot, and cold mist draped the treetops like a funeral veil. Drips of water fell from leaves onto mossy stumps, sounding like slow ticking clocks where Alan's car had sat, now cordoned off. The ground was flattened by ranger boots. Birds chirped in the distance, too cheerful for the mood. Leila stood at the trailhead, her hands trembling just slightly. She clutched the voicemail transcript in one hand, her father's Polaroid in the other. The last photo he'd taken was left inside the camera, a blurry shot of a ravine, half-shadowed with something pale in the corner. Bone, bark? She stared into the woods, heart thudding against her ribs. This wasn't a man who got lost. This was a man who left clues, and she intended to follow every single one. Leila wasn't a hiker. She was a news editor, a coffee addict, a woman who wore dry-clean-only pants and cursed her way through airport security. But there she was, boots crunching gravel, wind biting her cheeks. A rented backpack digging into her shoulders as she followed the Skyline Trail like it owed her answers. The ranger had shown her the red-circled area on Alan's torn map off the main trail, near an old glacial runoff known for mudslides. Too dangerous, he'd said, too unstable. But Leila knew her father didn't scare easily, and he didn't draw red circles for fun. The hike was harder than she'd expected. The trees leaned in like gossiping old women, and the trail narrowed into soft, unstable dirt. She stopped at a rocky ledge where a trickle of icy water slid down into a ravine. Below, Everything turned dark, thick brush, broken trees, and shadows that shifted with the clouds. She checked her phone. No signal, of course. Her gut twisted. Not from fear, but from knowing. Something happened here. She slid down the bank cautiously. Her hand brushing a branch, then she froze. Half buried in the soil was a boot. Weathered, leather cracking, laces gone. The kind her dad wore. She knelt and brushed away the dirt with shaking fingers. The sole was partially melted. A small smear of brown mud or dried blood clung to the inner rim. Why hadn't the rangers found this? Because they hadn't looked. Not here, not properly. When she brought it back to the station, the ranger seemed unimpressed. Might belong to another hiker. We've had missing persons in that zone before. But Lila's rage flared. She knew that boot her dad had once glued a pebble into the heel for lucky traction. She'd mocked him for it. It was still there. She demanded it be tested for DNA. The ranger nodded but didn't write anything down. Back at her motel, Lila opened her father's voicemail again, letting it loop in the silence. It's time. I'll see you where it started. Started? What? Not his career. Not his grief. Started his undoing. Ma'am, respectfully. Don't ma'am me. You didn't even take the boot back to evidence. You found it off the trail. Could be unrelated. So was his car. So was his last breath. Do those not count either? We're just saying we can't confirm. Oh, I can. My father had a pebble glued into the sole. See this? That's not another hiker. That's him. That's what's left of him. The younger ranger shifted uncomfortably. We'll run the sample. It might take time. Great. I've got 5 years of waiting experience under my belt. The motel smelled like wet carpet and disappointment. Faded floral wallpaper peeled. At the edges, the bathroom light flickered when she turned it on, like it needed to make a decision. Leela sat cross-legged on the bed. A corkboard of clippings and hand-scribbled notes sprawled around her. Rain tapped the window like impatient fingers. She stared at the voicemail transcript. The ink had smudged where her thumb pressed too long. On her laptop screen, old news articles, scanned hospital logs, and a photo of Alan with someone cropped out, someone who seemed deliberately erased. Her eyes drifted to the boot beside her, wrapped in a grocery bag. A piece of him, torn from the mountain. From memory, she reached for the recorder on the nightstand and clicked it on. Day 1, I found the boot. I'm not crazy. I'm not paranoid. I just, ... No, something died out there. And I don't think it was just my father. It was a freak. Thaw in late March that changed everything. Rainier's eastern basin had flooded after a string of warm nights and sudden downpours. Trails were closed. The beavers, ever adaptive, had begun rebuilding their dams further downstream, chewing through logs and dragging debris across glacial runoff like silent engineers. A backpacker named Felix Tran was shooting drone footage near sunrise. Point when his controller pinged a low-altitude obstruction warning. He brought the drone closer. What he thought was a tangle of sticks and plastic turned out to be fabric. Torn and caught in a muddy lattice of branches, Park Services sent a small team. The Beaver Dam was 3 feet deep, partially submerged in freezing runoff, packed with twigs, wrappers, small bones, and something else. A scarf. A woman's scarf. Threadbare, and wrapped around something dense, almost ritualistically, inside. Finger. Bones, 4 of them, clean, yellowed, bound with a scarf like a secret. The woods had tried to bury. Lila got the call at 6:37 a.m. She drove 3 hours through rain and near-zero visibility without blinking once. At the ranger station, Detective Rohan Ames was already there, pacing. Tall, with a posture like he'd been holding his breath for 5 years. We found something, he said. And you're not going to like it. This isn't just about your father anymore, Ames said, laying the scarf out on the table. Inside a clear evidence bag. Whose is it? We're not sure, but it's old, early 2000s maybe, cotton blend. Dyed with cochineal extractor, expensive. Lila leaned in, that shade of red. My mum had one like it. Ames frowned. Your father's wife? No, not Elaine. The woman in that photo. The one cropped out. The one nobody will name. Ames held her gaze. You're talking about Marcy Flynn. You know the name. I buried it. Along with every lead that came with it. She vanished too cleanly. I always suspected she faked it. Or someone helped her disappear. And now I think she might have ended up in that damn Lila's jaw clenched. Then where's the rest of her? The dam looked unnatural, even in nature's chaos. Branches twisted around each other like broken limbs, packed with moss, trash, and bone-white fragments. The scarf so violently red against the muddy backdrop hung limp, like a forgotten warning flag. Water trickled through its folds as if trying to rinse away the memory. Detective Ames stood at the edge, wind slicing across his trench coat. Behind him, tarps and floodlights turned the discovery into a crime scene theater. Lila approached the dam's edge carefully. Beneath the surface, something glimmered, maybe a zipper, maybe a tooth. The forensics team whispered to each other, their gloved hands pulling apart layers of decay. One tech turned and vomited behind a tree. Found something else, another said. A locket, silver-dented inside. A photo, a young woman, smiling, black curls, hospital scrubs. A name etched on the back. Marcy. The photograph inside the locket was no stock image, no random snapshot. It was Marcy Flynn, radiant, alive. But behind her was a dead giveaway. Beige floral wallpaper Lila hadn't seen since she was 10. Back when their family still lived in Tacoma. Back before her mum's chemo, before they moved. Before her father started locking doors that used to stay open. That wallpaper lined the upstairs hallway. Marcy had been in their home. Not once, often. Lila's hands shook as she clutched the locket. 1,000 unspoken memories hissing back into her brain like steam through a cracked pipe. Midnight phone calls. Whispered arguments behind walls. Her mother crying in the laundry room. She hadn't connected it before, because children don't. But now it was screaming. She dug into hospital archives, using her media credentials and fake names. Eventually, she found it. Marcy Flynn, RN, assigned to pediatric oncology. Same wing where Dr. Alan Whitmore was lead surgeon. Dismissed from the hospital in 2003 after a patient death under unclear supervision. Weeks later, Marcy was declared missing. A boating accident. No body recovered. Case closed. Just like her father's. Clean, empty, convenient. Lila requested sealed HR records through a contact. What she got chilled her spine. A formal complaint. Filed anonymously, accusing Dr. Whitmore and Marcy of negligence, and possibly falsifying patient charts. The whistleblower. Also gone from the hospital 6 months later. Every page Lila turned wasn't just paper, was a layer of her father's life peeling away like diseased skin. She was in our house, Lila said, staring at the locket under the desk lamp. Detective Ames sat across from her, sipping burnt coffee. You're sure? That wallpaper. I helped my mum hang it. Marcy wasn't just a fling. She lived in our orbit. Ames leaned back. We dug up her work history. She and your father logged 137 overlapping shifts in 2002 alone. There's a pattern, and not just in scheduling. You think they were in love. I think she knew things. About him. About that patient death in '03. The one they swept under a confidentiality agreement. Jesus, Lila whispered. We contacted Marcy's sister in Oregon. She swears Marcy called her a week before the boating accident, said she. Was scared that she was going to blow the whistle. Then she disappears. And now her bones show up inside a dam wrapped in her own scarf. And your father vanishes years later. Same woods, same zone. What do you think, detective? Ames met her eyes. I think someone wanted them both gone, and whoever it was, wasn't done 5 years ago. Rain lashed the motel window. Like a jealous lover, Lila stood in front of the mirror, holding the locket against her chest like armor. Her reflection looked pale, tired, but alive with a kind of electric rage that came from truth breaking the surface. On her laptop, crime scene photos flickered. Marcy's scarf, the bones, the waterlogged dam, She clicked between hospital records and family photos. Her father always looked calm, but now it seemed performative. Like someone holding a breath too long. Outside, the woods whispered like they were rehearsing a secret. Ames' SUV headlights appeared through the rain. He was back from Tacoma General, with more files. Maybe more names. She turned off the lights. Sat in the dark. Let the storm talk. Because now she didn't just want to find out what happened, she wanted someone to pay for it. The tape recorder crackled to life with that slow, grainy hum. Only old cassettes make the sound of time unspent. Lila sat cross-legged on her motel floor, sleeves rolled, eyes burning. The tapes had come from a retired records clerk Ames bribed with a bottle of whiskey and a veiled subpoena threat. Labeled Internal Staff Feedback, Pediatrics Wing 2002-2003. They'd been recorded as part of a stress and ethics audit after the hospital lost to patients within 6 months. Lila fast-forwarded through banal small talk, nervous, laughter, complaints about long shifts till she hit the motherlode. You think it's just you and me now, huh? Marcy's voice. Tense, crackling. If I go down, Alan, I'm taking your legacy with me. You won't hide behind scrubs forever. Silence. Then Whitmore's voice, calm, ice cold. Do what you need to do. Just don't come to my house again, not when Leela's home. Click. End of side A. Leela stared at the player, breath caught in her throat like it hit a wall. Marcy had been threatening him. Blackmail, exposure. But why? Was it about the malpractice case, or something darker? Another tape began this time, someone else's voice, rougher, older, familiar. Gregory. I told Alan I'd stay clean. Ing meant it, but he keeps pushing, keeps acting like I owe him for what happened to Mum. I didn't kill her. She. Odd, everyone knows it. Lila sat frozen. She hadn't even known her uncle worked at the hospital, but he had, briefly. As a janitor, around the same time Marcy disappeared, something clicked in her brain like a trigger being cocked. A hidden affair, a whistleblower nurse, a junkie brother desperate for cash, and a man with a reputation worth killing for. It wasn't just about love or betrayal. It was about leverage. Gregory was on payroll, Lila asked, voice barely steady. Ames nodded. 2 months. Hospital tried to scrub it. Guess they thought a Whitmore in custodial work would stain the brand. He was there when Marcy vanished. Yep. And get this, he was let go the day after her reported boating accident. Lila blinked. Jesus, do you think he... I think it's messy. And I think Greg's got one hell of a motive. Resentment? Debt? Maybe jealousy? Maybe guilt? Lila shook her head. Dad always said Greg had demons, but he still helped him. Paid his rehab. Put up bail. Ames looked her dead in the eyes. Sometimes the people who owe you the most are the ones who want you gone the worst. Rain traced lines across the motel window like veins under skin. Inside, cassette tapes lay scattered across the bed, like evidence at a crime scene. Each was labeled in shaky handwriting. June STAFFM, Intake Record 3. The motel's cheap desk lamp flickered, casting shadows across Leela's face. Her hands trembled as she pushed another tape into the recorder. The room smelled of stale coffee, wet clothes, and something heavier. Dread. Outside, wind rattled the trees. Somewhere down the road, a truck groaned past in the dark. She stared. At the paused tape deck, a fingerprint smudge on the play button caught the light. Her dad's or Gregory's, who knew anymore. She pressed play, hiss, click, footsteps. A door slamming shut. Then you said she was gone, Alan, that it was handled. She was, then she came back. So what now? Now we pray the river keeps her secret. The photo changed everything. Marcy, Flynn, visibly pregnant, standing beside an old station wagon, hand resting on her belly. Her face looked tired, worn, but not unhappy, the kind of expression that said, I'm scared, but I have a future. Lila turned the image over again. No timestamp, no location, just one sentence scrawled in shaky red ink. The baby wasn't Alan's. The implication shattered the timeline. If Marcy was pregnant, And it wasn't Alan's child. Who was she? Running from Anne, who wanted her silenced. Lila traced the photo back to the clinic records. Hidden under her father's name in a private folder was an appointment. M. Flynn, the 11th of October, 03, OBGYN. Consult, elevated risk pregnancy, no insurance. It had been paid for in cash. By the time the consult happened, Marcy had already been dismissed from the hospital, and Lila's father had started transferring money into a private offshore account. The records showed multiple withdrawals within weeks of Marcy's disappearance. The last was $7,000. Labeled, Consult plus Relocation. Lila's stomach turned. He hadn't just known about the pregnancy. He was helping her disappear, or trying to. But someone found out, because on October 18, 2003, exactly 1 week later, Marcy's sister reported her missing. The hospital officially logged the event as coincidental. Lila no longer believed in coincidences. She pulled out the sealed malpractice report. Patient name, Elias McHenry, age 9, cause of death, surgical complications. Cardiac arrest. It was Marcy who logged the post-op vitals, but she was off shift that day. Someone had forged her initials, and Alan had overseen the surgery. The cover-up wasn't just to protect a romance, it was to protect a career, a reputation, a legacy, and maybe a killer. He paid for her to vanish. Lila whispered. Ames glanced up from the file. You're sure it's his account? Same bank. Same signature code. He routed it through a dummy LLC. Jesus. And look at this. She pointed at the malpractice files. These vitals were signed by Marcy, but she wasn't working that day, so who signed them? Either my dad, or someone trying to frame her. You think your father killed her? Lila hesitated. No, I think he loved her, maybe stupidly, maybe selfishly, but I think he was helping her run, and Gregory, he's the only one who knew about the account. Dad helped him out of jail in 2002, that offshore fund. He used it to launder Greg's fines. It's all connected. You think Greg found out about the pregnancy? If the baby wasn't Dad's, and it was Greg's? Ames went quiet. We need to know who that child would have been. Or, if it was ever born. The hospital lights buzzed overhead like angry bees. Lila sat alone in the archive room. Files stacked in uneven towers around her. Each one, a quiet, screen.photos logs, scans of handwritten charts, coffee-stained papers that reeked of the early 2000s. A nurse's ID badge, Marcy's bent, discolored, found in a box of unclaimed items. And on the white coat folded beside its Dr. Alan Whitmore embroidered in blue was a dark brown smudge that never washed out, blood. It had faded, but it was there. She could see it, even under the fluorescence. Like a ghost refusing to leave. Lila ran her fingers over the sleeve. Was this the coat he wore when Elias died? Or, when Marcy disappeared, her father used to say, doctors don't bury mistakes. We carry them on our shoulders. Apparently, some also drowned them in rivers. The cabin sat like a scar on the side of Rainier's belly, half swallowed by trees, with a collapsing porch and soot-stained windows. Lila hadn't been there since she was 8, maybe 9. Back then, it was Dad's thinking place. He said it helped him breathe. Now, it looked like it hadn't breathed in years. Ames had tracked the deed to a shell company linked to Alan Whitmore. Taxes stopped being paid around the same time Marcy vanished. And no record of visitors since 2003, at least, not legally. The door creaked open with a tired sigh. Dust blanketed everything. A table stacked with rotting newspapers. A coffee mug fossilized to the counter. A couch with rat holes chewed through its corners. But it was the smell that got her, not rot, not mold, formaldehyde. She moved slowly. Phone light scanning across the walls. Notes, photos, Polaroids, all pinned haphazardly like a detective's vision board, gone mad. Marcy's face appeared again and again, different hairstyles, different years. One photo in a hospital stairwell. Another chilling showed her walking out of a pharmacy, belly rounded under a grey coat. Alan had been tracking her. Long after her death, or maybe long before it, a journal lay open on the floor, pages warped by time and weather. She flipped through with gloved hands. She lied. I can't trust her anymore, but I still love her. I want to forgive her. I don't know if I can live with what I saw. Then, further down, Greg was here. I didn't let him in. He's slipping again. He wants money. Keeps asking about the baby. And one more. If something happens to me, the mountain will know why. That was the last entry. This isn't a retreat, Lila said into her phone, voice low. It's a shrine. He kept everything. Pictures of her. Medical bills, even old sonograms. Ames's voice crackled through the signal. You find any mention of a birth? Only the pregnancy. It's like she vanished off his map after that. Or he lost track. Maybe on purpose. Anything about Greg? More than I wanted to know. He visited the cabin multiple times. Dad stopped logging the dates. Said Greg was demanding money. And asking about the kid. You think Greg found out the baby wasn't his either? Lila sighed. If he thought it was his, and then found out it wasn't, that kind of betrayal, that could drive a relapse. Or worse. Motive, Ames said. No, Lila corrected. Motive with rage. A broken mirror hung above the sink, jagged at the corners, warped at the center. Lila caught her reflection in its splintered, multiplied. She looked like her father now. The same sharp jaw, same tired eyes, maybe even the same secrets. Passed down like heirlooms. A candle had melted into the kitchen table, waxed frozen mid. Next to it sat an empty baby bottle, half filled with sand. She stepped into the back room and froze. A single rocking chair sat in the corner, still facing the window. Behind it, taped to the wall, a note. Sometimes silence is a choice. Heard a creak, dash floorboards, not hers. She spun, nothing, just trees through cracked glass, and a strange flutter in her chest, like she wasn't alone. Not now, not for years. The dam had become an obsession. After the initial discovery, Marcy's scarf, the finger bones, the locket, the forensic team returned with underwater scanners, metal probes, and cadaver dogs. What they found wasn't just one burial. It was a series, a pattern. The Beavers, unknowingly, had been stockpiling bones, cloth, rusted surgical tools, and items no animal would ever drag, like syringes, zip ties, a baby rattle. The Rangers cordoned off the entire East Basin. Ames called it Rainier's morgue. Lila called it intentional. This wasn't the mountains doing. This was someone's hiding place. Over the course of 4 days, they recovered a fetal skull, roughly 32 weeks, developed a woman's hip bone, with a pelvic fracture consistent with a fall or blunt trauma, name tag, M. Flynn, a pacifier with faded cartoon bears, a bundle of surgical gloves, tied in a knot. Inside a sealed bag the fetal remains were tested. Female DNA matched partially to Marcy Flynn. The baby had existed. She hadn't just been a rumor, or a manipulation tactic. She'd made it to term, and then vanished into the current. Lila stood at the riverbank, the entire 4th day, unmoving, watching. Like if she stared long enough, the water might apologize. What hit hardest wasn't the tragedy, it was the design. Someone didn't just kill. They curated. Bones were stripped. Items wrapped. Memories preserved. Like someone wanted to bury the guilt, but not forget it. Ames stood beside her, rubber gloves dripping, face gray with disbelief. We're not just chasing a killer, we're chasing a collector. There's no way Beavers dragged surgical gloves into a dam, Lila muttered. Not without instructions, Ames replied, deadpan. So, what? Someone dumped everything upstream. Knew the animals would build around it. Maybe. Or maybe they used the dam as camouflage. Nature's body bag and my dad's bones. Still not found. But there are remains we haven't ID'd yet. Some adult, some child. Jesus, this wasn't one crime, Lila. It's layered, ritualistic. The gloves were tied in surgical knots. Someone was playing Dr. Gregory. Ames didn't answer. Instead, he held up a torn hospital scrub's sleeve, soaked in mud. On it, the name tag stitching still faintly visible. Whitmore, A. Lila felt something inside her collapse. Her father had been there in that dam, a piece of him. At least, the dam looked like a broken cathedral, beams twisted like ribs, mud bubbling through hollow pockets. The water level dropped 4 inches. After the forensic team started pumping it out, inside, the remains sat like relics. A femur with teeth marks. A baby blanket, bleached and tattered, clinging to a tree branch like it was begging to be held. Crime scene tape waved weakly in the wind, barely keeping out the press vans now parked down the ridge. The air smelled like copper and pine sap. Lila knelt at the edge. Staring into the black water, her father wasn't just missing anymore, he was part of the river. Ames stood beside her, silent, his hand resting gently on her shoulder. Neither of them said the obvious. This wasn't just murder, this was a family burial plot. They confirmed it twice. The gold-filled molar found in the dam mud matched Gregory Whitmore's dental chart. Not a maybe, a lock, but he'd been spotted 14 months ago. Alive and limping through a bait shop in Snoqualmie, ranting about the girl in the water and buying freeze-dried meat with a fistful of $100 bills. Ames reviewed the security footage himself. The timestamp was solid. Facial recognition analysis came back at 96.7% certainty, Gregory Whitmore. But how? How could he have been dead before that, unless someone wanted them to believe he was still alive, or worse, someone had been posing as Gregory to throw them off? Lila returned to the motel. Rattled, exhausted, and clinging to the one thing she hadn't opened, an old photo album her mother had locked in a cedar chest. Inside it, tucked behind a faded beach snapshot, was a candid photo. Gregory, sitting in their kitchen in 2002, and beside him, a second man. Similar build. Shaved head, same ratty jean jacket. But something was off. A mole on the wrong cheek, a missing knuckle scar. This wasn't Gregory, it was someone pretending to be him. She flipped the photo over. Written in her mother's soft cursive, Alan Gregg and Neil, summer after the scandal. Neil, she had no idea who that was, but the third man. He looked a lot like the guy in the bait shop footage. The body in the dam was Greg Ames, confirmed, pacing. But the man in Snoqualmie. Not unless he pulled a resurrection. I found a name. Neil, Leela said, placing the photo on the table. My mum wrote it, he was there. Pretending to be Greg. Ames leaned in. You think this Neil's been impersonating your uncle? He was in the cabin too. In the background of a Polaroid. Watching. Always watching. Who is he? I don't know. I ran his face through old hospital security records. One match. She handed him the printout. Neil Croft. He was an orderly. Suspended for behavioral issues in 01, and he shared a rehab program with Gregory. Twice, Ames whistled. So Greg dies, and Neil Croft becomes Greg, long enough to collect cash. Muddy timelines, maybe even plant evidence, but why? Because he was promised something, or threatened. Or maybe, Leela said, eyes narrowing, he saw what Alan did, and wanted to wear the mask of a man who could get away with it. The motel's overhead light buzzed like it had a secret. Lila stood over a cluttered desk, photos scattered like puzzle pieces from a crime that didn't want solving. She pinned the bait shop still. The old kitchen photo, and a blurry Polaroid of Neil at the cabinor showing one thing, a presence, lurking. Copying, she circled the man's face in red marker. He always appeared in the background, slight, silent, like a bad dream, refusing to fade. Her hands trembled as she realized something else, the journal. The handwriting. The entries that seemed too frantic to be Alan's. Some weren't, they were Neil's, and he'd been writing as Alan, leaving clues, spreading rot, misdirecting everyone, even her. This wasn't just identity theft, it was psychological warfare. Neil Croft lived like a ghost. The trailer sat on the edge of the old Whitmore land, down a gravel path eaten by weeds, camouflaged behind a row of dying cedars. No mailbox, no power lines, no attempt at being found, but someone had been living there, and someone had been watching. Ames parked 100 yards back. Lila insisted on going in first. Inside, the air reeked of formaldehyde and old cigarettes. The walls were lined with newspaper clippings, all about Dr. Alan Whitmore, malpractice, disappearances. The damn discovery at the center of it all, a massive corkboard, with strings like veins connecting names, photos, DNA reports, and, at the dead center, a photo of Lila circled in black marker. Underneath, one word: daughter. Neil had been watching her, studying her, preparing for this. She found him in the back room, slumped in a chair, breathing shallow, arms covered in old injection scars. The man was a walking corpse in a Whitmore mask, pale, twitching but smirking. "Took you long enough," he rasped. Ames moved to cuff him, but Lila held up her hand. "Not yet," she said. "Let him talk," and he did. Neil told them everything. He and Gregory met in rehab. Gregory talked about Alan like he was a god and a devil. A brother who saved his life and ruined it. Gregory blamed Alan for their mother's death, for Marcy, for everything. But when Gregory OD'd in 2004, Neil buried him, then became him, for revenge. He infiltrated Alan's life, shadowed him, stalked Marcy, and orchestrated her disappearance with a surgical precision he learned from watching. He didn't kill her, Neil coughed. He tried to save her, but she fell, slipped, pregnant, panicked, died right there in the cabin. The baby, too. Alan buried them, alone, guilt, drunk, and Neil. He waited for Alan to lose his mind, waited for him to return to the mountain, where Neil finished the job. "Why?" Lila asked, voice ice cold. Neil grinned. "Because he got to be the genius, the savior." While Greg cleaned blood off hospital floors. "So you took his face." "I took everything, his brother, his nurse, his kid, his peace. You killed them all." "I didn't kill." I unraveled. Ames cut in. "Where's Alan's body?" Neil looked at Leela. "You want it? Fine. He's under the North Cedar, the one she liked to sit under. You buried him next to Marcy. He asked for it. Said he didn't want to be found, said guilt doesn't get a grave." Leela swallowed hard. "You're a coward." Neil's voice cracked. "I'm the mirror. You all just hate the reflection." They found the body, just as he said, under the North Cedar tree, wrapped in a white coat, brittle with rot. Alan Whitmore's jawbone was shattered. Cause of death, blunt trauma to the temple. Murder beside him, a gravestone carved crudely from slate. "I tried to do no harm, I failed." Marcy's grave lay parallel, smaller, neater, and between them, a shallow third hole, empty, meant for a child that never got the chance. Rain began to fall light, then harder, like the mountain was weeping, or finally exhaling. Leela stood in silence. One boot on her father's burial mound, one hand holding the locket. The scarf was tied to a branch above. Still red, still screaming. 3 months later, the story was everywhere. The Beaver Dam burial case made national headlines. Podcasts, Reddit threads, morning talk shows with glassy-eyed anchors fumbling to pronounce. Rainier, they got the flashy version. A disgraced doctor, a nurse, who died pregnant, a vengeful brother, a psychopath in disguise. But they missed the heart of it, the rotting, aching truth. It wasn't about murder, it was about failure. Failure to protect, failure to heal, failure to speak, when silence felt safer. Leela quit her job. The newsroom offered her a promotion, anchor level, they said. She didn't care, she started writing. Not articles, letters, to, Marcy, to, the baby, to, her father, to. The ghost of herself that still lived in that cabin. Sometimes she'd wake to dreams where the dam broke. Not water, but bones flooding her house. A child's cry, her father whispering, "I'm sorry," over and over again, like a skipping record. The court declared Alan Whitmore's legacy irreparably compromised. The hospital scrubbed his name off the wall, but Leela, she kept his white coat, folded it neatly in a cedar chest. Beside it, the locket still closed, still heavy, because grief doesn't end when you find the body, it starts when you bury it. "You could have walked away," Ames said, leaning on her porch railing. "After we found the bodies, most would have." Lila handed him a coffee. "That would have been mercy." "I don't get that. You got justice." Justice is for strangers. This was personal. You still think your dad was a villain? Lila stared off. The mountain was just a shadow now in the distance. No, she said. I think he was a coward. And a man in love. And a surgeon who broke his own code. You still wear the locket? She touched it absent-mindedly. No, I keep it nearby. Though, not because I miss him, but because I need the weight. You ever wonder what would have happened if she lived? Every day, what would she say to you? Lila sipped the coffee, then whispered. She'd say, you were always meant to cut deeper. Seattle was gray again. The kind of gray that soaked into your socks and behind your eyes. Lila sat at her desk. A single lamp on, casting soft amber across a folder labeled, Whitmore Private. Do not open. She never opened it. Instead, she wrote, her handwriting, precise, sharp, a new manuscript, The Woman in the Locket, a true account. Her phone buzzed. Another podcast request. Declined. She clicked through her laptop files. Photos from the investigation, Polaroids, the Beaver Dam, the scarf tied to the branch like a blood-soaked flag. Her eyes stopped on one image, her father. Years before, arms around a patient, smiling, not fake, not rehearsed, human. Outside, the wind picked up. Inside. Her pen didn't stop. 6 months later, the dam broke. Literally, an early spring melt sent torrents crashing down Rainier's flank. What remained of the beaver-built graveyard was swept. Downstream, trees uprooted, bones churned loose from their hidden pockets. When the water receded, the rangers found something lodged between two rocks. A phone, wrapped in a sealed plastic pouch. Still intact, it wasn't Alan's, wasn't Neil's, it was Marcy's. The data team at the bureau spent 3 weeks decoding it. The battery had corroded, but the chip was readable. The phone contained a series of video diary entries, voice memos, dated weeks after her reported death, and one unsent text, drafted to an unknown number. He's losing control. I think Greg knows about the baby. If anything happens to me, Lila needs to know the truth. The date, 2 days after her supposed accidental drowning. Lila reviewed the footage herself. One video hit like a hammer. Marcy, sitting in a dim cabin, holding her belly, eyes red. If you're watching this, Alan, it's not yours. It never was. But you tried to save us. I don't want to disappear. I want to live. But Greg, he's slipping again. He said something tonight that scared me. He said, if I can't have my bloodline, no one will. The video cut out as someone knocked on the door. This wasn't a case of guilt or grief. This was a planned silencing, and Alan had tried to take the blame to protect his brother, even in death. You seeing this? Ames asked, eyes fixed on the screen. Lila nodded slowly. This changes everything. It confirms Alan didn't kill her. Yeah. But it doesn't exonerate him either. He lied, he covered, he buried her, he protected you, and how many others got hurt because of it? Ames leaned back. Sometimes justice isn't black and white, it's gray, like a mountain in fog. Lila sighed. Then maybe I'm done climbing mountains. You know that's not true. No, she admitted. But I'm done waiting for answers. It's time to go find the rest. The archive room was empty now, save for the buzz of the projector. Marcy's final frame lingered on the wall, her hand resting on her belly. A woman preparing for war she knew she'd lose. Lila stood alone, shadows stretched across the floor, arms crossed. The locket was gone. So was the scarf. She'd buried them both beside the tree. But now, she had something else, a name, on one of Marcy's voice notes, barely audible behind the static. Tell Neil, he can't use Greg's face forever. He's not the only one Alan tried to fix. Another another patient another monster in training. The mountain may have given up its bodies, but not its secrets. As Lila shut off the projector, her phone buzzed. Unknown number. You think this is over? You still don't know what was buried beneath your name, N. She stared at the message, then packed a bag, took one last look at the mountain and drove north because the water doesn't forget, and neither does she.